Brace yourselves for this video. Brace yourselves. Let's hope you're braced. The following is shown in unrestored state. And it's not complete, that is, I don't have the recording medium for this machine. So I can't use it right away. But for everyone to see, is an incredibly rare device. The #1 rarest machine in my collection. Excluding the possibility that I have a TC50 that may have been used by Apollo. This is the GAF, or GAF Rols dictation machine. In its as-found condition that I acquired at an estate sale for $10. The totally new system of dictation by GAF Corporation. The Rols. Remove this guard before using machine. Lift hinge film, or in this case FIIM because they made a typo, pressure plate from nameplate end. Remove this card and save to reinstall when transporting your Rols machine. Go. Notice anything catch your eye? You'll notice a tape head centered. This head is able to pivot back and forth like that. Obviously, when you carry the machine around, the head can freely move, so that's why they made this here, to hold the head in place. You can see on the other side it has little dimples there. So you've already seen that the tape head moves from side to side. Also notice these two ruling pieces right here, these two cogs. They can move like this. Let me zoom out a bit. There's a manual mover to move these cogs back and forth. Notice the clicking. There's a control here. Listen, in this position, excuse me for the blurry image, down it's this arrow. And below it you have a switch for dictate and conference, obviously to select the sensitivity of the microphone. Here you see the microphone / speaker of the Rols machine, this being a model 102 by the way. You can see basic controls for speak, stop, listen, and then there's an isolated R right there for rewind. Next to it you'll notice it's a strange proprietary plug. Not only does it have the contacts on the side, but also one in the middle. Over here you have a battery level indicator for if you are using a battery pack, but this unit has a 120 volt power pack on it and not the battery pack option. Now let's take another look at where the recording medium goes. Obviously it's magnetic in nature, like a tape recorder. It goes into this slot right in here, this holding area. But I want you to notice some striking words when reading and seeing this right here. Considering that I am using a composite video camera and not anything HD, I will read this out loud because it's probably too blurry to be able to read on a screen. Instructions for loading dictation film roll. Before loading film, make sure roll ends are evenly aligned and flush with spool. Drop roll of film, with arrows on right side, into compartment. Push down firmly on roll until levers are in forward position. Do not push down on levers. Turn film roll by hand to make sure it spins freely and has some end play. Lift film pressure plate and place film into channel with sprocket wheels engaged in perforations. Close pressure plate. Turn hand wheel on unit to ensure proper film feed and bring leading edge of film to red line. If you notice on the picture of the incorrect and the correct way of putting it, it's too blurry, but it even looks like film that you'd find in for a camera. It's a huge shame considering that I did not have any of the film recording tape with this machine when I got it. I looked around the room where I found this machine in the estate sale and could not find any evidence of the original recording film or let's put it this way, magnetic film for this machine. But I saw from an internet article, mind you, from the Oregon Secretary of State, where they were needing to transfer many recordings made on this medium to digital, but did not have a working player for it. They showed some pictures from when they finally did acquire a working player, or were using one, and you could see it was a brown color of magnetic tape, and it was as wide as this area is here, and it had the little perforations on each side just like you'd expect on Kodak film, and film would travel, and of course I believe the head would probably slowly sweep back and forth. I'm supposing it goes one direction, increments 1 on the cog, the other direction, increments 1, and just so forth. It's a fascinating design which maximizes the surface area of the wide tape, and as well as having tape that's wide, you can maximize recording time. It was said on that article that this machine is capable of 7.5 hours of continuous recording time. Which I found quite fascinating. I also found that they had spent $3,000 to buy a complete unit from eBay, with all the accessories and I believe in working condition. $3,000. I paid $10 for this unit. Obviously it is not working fully. I tried powering it up earlier and the motor ran and the amplifier came on, although not very loud, and I believe it needs to be recapped, but the mechanism that moves the head back and forth is not operating, so I'll be opening this machine up and seeing what's wrong with it. Perhaps it's just a bad belt or something simple like that. But anyone out there watching this video, I am very interested in acquiring a roll of this film tape, this magnetic film that I can use with this machine. Very interested. In the meantime, I have plans to try to make a makeshift version by getting an index card, perforating the ends, or getting some old Kodak film and gluing it to the sides of an index card, and then getting some old VHS tape and kind of gluing the tape down onto it to make a makeshift card of recording tape, so to so to speak, that I could run through the machine so I could at least make some use of it, because I'm very interested in using this historical and rare piece of equipment. So some more interesting things to show here on this device, and it's from the 1960s. I believe this one here is from 1967. On the back you'll see the Rols, the GAF Rols there for the power pack, the AC power on-off switch for the power supply module. If you look at the back here, not sure how well you can see this. GAF Corporation, New York, New York. The interesting, and it's made in the US. The model number is 102. The interesting thing is a serial number, 3361. I'm pretty sure that being only a 4-digit serial number, this is the production run of this unit is not very big. There's only thousands of machines made, apparently, not even 10,000s. And if that was the case, it only adds to the ridiculous rarity of this machine. And on the internet, I've heard of quite a few. You know, being a tape recorder enthusiast, and over time, on the internet, I've seen quite a few examples of rare oddball formats out there. Of course, there's a Mohawk midget tape. You know, there's a Channel Master / Sanyo Micropack 35. There's all kinds of machines. There's tape recorders that have the reels stacked on top of each other instead of side by side. I'd love to get one of those. And I'm talking about like machines that are open reel. I'm not talking about the Micropack 35 or the Mohawk midget tape, which both incorporate that design. There's the RCA sound tape cartridge. There's the dictaphone dictabelt, which is not too rare, but still not like as common as the magnetic formats nowadays. Or I shouldn't say nowadays, but they're easier to find magnetic machines than it is to find a dictabelt machine. But you can still, or that is the Travel Master Portable. That is the one I was most interested in because it's portable. There's the IBM Magnabelt machine. I have one of those, and I have not made a video of it yet, uploaded to YouTube, unfortunately, even though I got it 3 years ago. It's kind of insulting. But I've heard of all kinds of oddball formats, but this one, I have not ever heard of it. It's the most strangest thing, and it's fascinating. Anyway, we'll be opening this machine up and taking a look inside and seeing how this device is and seeing if we can fix it. Here, as we continue the trek of the GAF, we see some interesting things. Here you can see a tiny switch. Notice with each tick, it selects one or the other contact. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That switch, I believe, is to control the head motion going back and forth. Here you can see the manual cog turner. Fascinating the way this machine is put together or designed. For interested parties out there, for any interested parties out there, it will already be made known that this machine is AC bias. This circuit board right here is the AC bias oscillator circuit board. Underneath, you can see the AC bias coil. It also boasts a trimmer to adjust the bias. You'll see the inside of this utterly fascinating device, and this mechanism here for scanning the head back and forth. The mechanism looks rather simple. I don't even see a belt in sight. Let's show it close up. The motor. You can hear the delicate sound of an end switch, which should allow it to increment by 1, go to the other side and increment by 1. Those incrementing, I believe, are controlled by solenoids. I saw one solenoid on one side of the machine. There's several relays in here too. There's a little solenoid. Yeah, it slightly moves this little wheel here. Very interesting machine. It's neat to see the circuitry inside this machine. The germanium transistors, the old capacitors. It of course contains plenty of relays. There's a relay right there. The relay over there, although it's covered up by some things, but here's the relay. Here, move that out of the way. There's the relay. A very interestingly made machine. This, you can see as you move this down away from the listen, you can see it turns a little pot. I believe that actually adjusts the recording level. Very nicely done. So I have the unit powered on. I've got good news and I've got bad news. The bad news is the mechanism that makes the head move back and forth automatically is not working. The motor is spinning, but something at the mechanics at the end that make it move back and forth is unfortunately not working. The good news is the rest of the electromechanical advanced mechanism does work. Let me zoom in here. You won't be able to see the cog itself move, but you should be able to see this wheel here move. If I go into rewind, the rewind system works. This cog here is moving, and so is this one. And of course, under here, the little cogs in here move as well, to backtrack the film into its cartridge. The play mechanism, if I manually move it, the advanced system works. Every time it goes to the end, it increments by 1. Unfortunately, the automatic side-to-side motion part is not working. And that's the heart of the machine, and is important for it to work. The amplifier works but weakly, and obviously is going to need to be recapped. It also looks as if the amplifier, or probably most of the machine, is actually made in Europe somewhere, considering the OC numbered transistors and Siemens made relays. So the main thing I want to be able to get working is this back and forth mechanism. If I can get that to work, and of course recap the amplifier, then I'll be able to have a working Rols machine, which could be worth a lot, although I'm not selling this thing. I'm just hoping that I can get the right original film for it, and I may be willing to do a deal. If I do get this machine to work properly, and someone important perhaps needs some perhaps archival recordings transferred to digital, but they don't have a machine, and they do happen to have some spare blank rolls of the recording film available, perhaps I could transfer a few rolls to digital for them for the price of one or two, just one really, blank roll that I could use to record on this thing. But of course that's provided I even get this machine to work to begin with. And that's interesting. Pushing down on that little switch does the advanced mechanism in forward motion over and over again. The question is how is it activated? Interesting. It's just that side-to-side part that's the most tricky, and hopefully doesn't have a broken part. That is, like, for instance, a broken gear, because that would render the machine unrepairable without the aid of a 3D printer, of which I have none. All the more reason I wish that I had the film for it. I figured out how this machine works, and once you see how the mechanism works, it's rather simple, although it's a very ingenious design, and I'm sure Clydesite would ooh and awe into the mechanical engineering that has went into this machine. All the parts necessary for this machine are present, and it does not use any belts. I did some lubrication, and I'm able to get the mechanism to work, not perfectly, but fairly well for being on original parts. Witness the device in action. Turn it on, hear the little motor start up, and then you can see the head sweep back and forth with a nice periodic tick sound, which kind of gives almost a feeling of clockwork, which would only make this machine far more interesting to use if I had the actual medium for it. Every time the head reaches one end, it activates a solenoid. When it reaches the other end, it activates the other solenoid. Each time the solenoid activates, it pushes this little rocker back and forth. You can see it move ever so slightly. Let's see if we can get a better image here. This machine really needs to be leveled to really operate properly. Oh, it actually is managing to operate non-level. You can see inside there is this going along with the shape of the path that the head rocks in. You can see this black and rusty metal piece. You may be able to barely notice it is actually rounded on the sides. Underneath this assembly that the head is mounted on is a tiny rubber roller. As a motor is spinning, it spins a worm gear, which spins another gear. Below that gear is a tiny rubber roller, which goes on the inside track of this metal piece. Each time this metal piece goes up and down, the roller touches either the top part of the inside or the bottom part of the inside, causing it to move the device, move the head along the path in the desired direction. It's quite an ingenious design. It almost sounds like a clock. And you could even almost keep time with it, provided the machine's reliable enough. Here you can see the solenoid mechanism in action. Right here. There's two little solenoids which push the lever back and forth. The control circuitry, which controls the back and forth motion, is entirely done with contacts and relays. It's a nice electromechanical machine. Then you'll see on this side here, let's try to get a better view of that. Of course, it's position sensitive. If I try to put it sideways, it kind of stops operating. You see this special gear here. You can see that the spokes on it are staggered. That's so that it will activate one switch one time, and the next time it moves, it activates a different switch and goes back and forth, back and forth. That is a switch that activates the two different solenoids, which tell the lever to move up or down, which cause a motor to go back and forth. And then of course there's end switches on each side. And then again, it's position sensitive, and also the cord for the microphone has a loose connection inside, so it tends to not get the best connection sometimes. That's why it was kind of going on and off, clicking like that. It's a fascinating little machine. A fascinating little dictation recorder. It's just a shame that I don't have the original tape for it. And so listen right now. The microphone though wasn't really making any sound. Oh, that's because the amplifier is still unplugged. I like the modular construction approach on this. There's a little plug-in for the amplifier. I was trying to slightly bend those little metal pieces that come from the solenoids to try to adjust how much pressure I get. But I had to be careful, because if I gave it too much pressure, when I got onto this side over here, it did not want to fully engage, and I had to move it manually back before it finally engaged into the other direction fully. So it has to be, right in the sweet spot. Now the amplifier should send out some sound. Ever so slight, of course. If I get my signal injector, and I'm not hearing it now. Oh, I can, but it's very slight. I'm going to put it right up to the microphone for the video. It stopped because of the cord for the microphone. So obviously this machine is in dire need of new capacitors for the amplifier to work well. Of course, I don't know what the actual linear velocity of this head is, but it looks like it's a decent speed, so I suspect the audio quality won't be too bad on this machine. Fascinating though that the machine is able to record for 7.5 hours on one film cartridge. I hope you enjoyed this preliminary presentation, this pre-restoration presentation, aside from the fact that I got the mechanism working. When I have this on, it doesn't work quite as well because there's more friction. Or does it? It's working considerably better than it was at first. Sometimes it seems practice makes perfect with these old machines, and the oil that I put in there is probably working its way, and it's starting to work better and better the more the machine is simply exercised and allowed to run. It seems that to be a common thing for old mechanical machines. Sometimes they don't quite go so well at first, but after you let them run for a while, they kind of get back up to speed. They kind of get used to moving again, used to working again, and it looks like this machine is definitely able to be a restored device, and is able to provide. Well, I should be able to get the amplifier working, just replacing all the capacitors, and I should have a working GAF Rols dictating machine, just without the special magnetic film. I hope you enjoyed this preliminary video on the GAF Rols Rologram dictation machine, model 102. More to come in the future once I get the amplifier recapped and I'm going to try to make a makeshift tape for it using an index card or something like that, or a piece of paper or something. Matter of fact, just a moment, I'm going to look at something right now. Thermal paper for the HP 85 computer. Unfortunately, it is not the right width to use right off the bat. Of course, I could cut it, but then again, I may not want to waste the old thermal paper. So I was hoping that maybe it would be just the right diameter, that I could get a strip and then maybe perforate or do something and put magnetic tape along it. But anyway, I really hope that I can find... I don't think I'll ever be able to find the tape for this thing. I think the only way I could possibly get it is if someone on the internet sees this video, or I contact someone online that has some kind of that knows of some tapes, because this thing is exceedingly rare. This is by far the most rare machine I own. That is for models of machines. I still think that the Sony TC50 that I acquired, that I made a video of back in December of 2014, one that may have possibly been used by NASA. If that machine was indeed used on the any of the Apollo missions, it by itself, that specific machine, would be the most rare. But the model itself is not so rare. This model though, this machine, regardless of which device it is, this model machine is very, very, very rare. Very rare. Just remember, the state of Oregon paid $3,000 for a complete working model on eBay of one of these machines, so they could transfer their archives to digital. I think that tells you something about the rarity of this machine, otherwise provided the very little information I found on the internet about this machine. Hope you enjoyed this video. This is a preliminary, of course, pre-restoration. Aside from getting the mechanicals seeming to work, it just needs to be recapped, and then I should have the machine, aside from the microphone not being so liable with the cord, but that's minor. The machine then should be ready for just the medium to record onto. This has been a 5 kilobyte production. Start date 2017 1908.